I just want to make sure here real quick that we are live and then we're going to get started. Uh, make sure here. All right. Well, I think we are live. Happy Monday, you guys. It's towards the end of September. I'm super stoked. I'm currently in Cincinnati, Ohio for a few days, maybe a few weeks. I think I have like another week or so left here, and then I'll be headed down to Mexico for the fall. But like I've been mentioning before, if you've been paying attention to social media or emails or anything like that, one of the big things that I'm going to be doing going forward is every Monday I'm going to be doing a YouTube live just like this to talk about some of the top news in the location dependent and digital nomad worlds. And this coincides with my newsletter, Nomad Insider. So if you're not subscribed to that, definitely head on over to thatremotelife.com/nomad insider and you can get the full kind of spiel. I send this out every week with some, quick notes that you need to check out just to stay current in the world of digital nomadism and an online business, location dependence, remote work, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm going to be going over some of my favorite stories and some of the most interesting things and kind of adding a little bit more commentary on these YouTube lives. So if you're not subscribed, first of all, hit like on here and then make sure that you subscribe. But with that, you guys, let's jump into one of the interesting stories that I found this week. And this was kind of like my main story for the week because I think it's an interesting trend that we're going to continue to see over time. And that is this idea of remote work being the new social network. Now, I remember in the very beginning of my journey in startup land, it was in 2014, 15-ish, and I remember I caught the tail end of this period where uh, everything that mentioned social networks was way sexy and very interesting to investors. And all of these businesses that didn't necessarily have to include a social network feature worked social networking in there because they were looking for this sort of like zing of what was popular. And I'm wondering if remote work is going to become a similar trend in startups. And the article here, let me see if I can share my screen so that I can show you guys the article. Um, Here we go. Hope that you guys can see it right now. But essentially, what we're talking about here is this new app called Lounge, which aims to reimagine the office for the remote work era. This is essentially what TechCrunch is reporting on here. And what Lounge is trying to do is to kind of replace a Zoom or Slack of sorts with this. I mean, it is cool. It's like a cool layout of essentially instead of every single person getting a profile picture, you get to see their like workspace, and you can design your workspace to match what you want to, what you want your workspace to look at and what that says about you. And one of their features is this ability for the window in the picture to actually showcase what time of the day it is for you so that your coworkers can see if you're working, if it's daytime, if it's nighttime, so on and so forth. So that's cool. Like, I get it. This is a really cool feature. But the founders talk about how they were working on a different app in the beginning where it was kind of like a to-do list for the home. And then once COVID hit, they decided to move over into the remote workspace and actually completely shifted their product into something that was remote work focused. And here is my issue with this. I'm not saying that this isn't a bad idea. I'm not even saying that people shouldn't be working on new remote work solutions. I love the fact there's all these people coming into it. But my concern is with the valuation of what these guys are getting. They're essentially raised $1.2 million from a whole bunch of different funds to create this replacement for how to run a remote team. And to me, this is just sort of like, first of all, without even going into like the business model type of stuff, because I mean, to me, this is sort of like features that if they are proven to work really well are just going to be copied by a big player like Slack, right? Like we've seen Instagram do this to Snapchat, and now they're doing it to TikTok, where they're essentially taking a platform which their whole thing is a feature of sorts they're replicating, right? That's what happened with stories. That's what we're now seeing Instagram do with Reels, in order to kind of tackle TikTok's new rise to fame. And so this is kind of like my one issue with this, but then also we're going to see a lot more companies, in my opinion, shift things that they were doing in order to focus on this, remote work trend, and the fact that remote work is now, or here to stay in so many ways, as we're going to talk about later in some of the other articles. And my biggest issue with this is that this doesn't solve the main problem. They're talking about how companies are really struggling to find a way to connect their employees while working remotely. And this is going to be a huge problem. This is going to be a huge issue for companies going forward. This has been a problem for companies who've been remote for a really long time already. But for companies that are just now transitioning to remote, this is certainly going to be an issue that they're going to have to solve. And the real solution for this that we've seen from companies that have been doing remote work for a really long time isn't to just come out with new tech to do it, it's to actually get their teams together. Remote work does not mean that you never get to see your coworkers, that you never get to see the people that you work with, just ever. It just means that you don't need to see each other every single day in order to get the benefit of working together. And so, one of the things that I'm really looking forward to seeing are companies that come out and do remote work um, team retreats, where they get the teams together, companies together, they get to work together for a few days or a week, and they get all of that in-person time together, and that's the solution for this. So I don't necessarily think that it's a whole bunch of new features, or Slack introducing something, or another company coming out that is in some way putting a band-aid on a gunshot wound, so to say. And that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to, is not so much more these features that are coming out and these new tech to solve this problem that is clearly a problem that needs to be solved by in-person time, just not necessarily coupled with going to the office and all that kind of stuff. I think this is, this isn't. I'm not trying to harp on this point. I'm not trying to necessarily say anything negative about Lounge as an app or as a company, but I do think it's an interesting trend. So let me know what you think. Do you think that remote work is this new buzzword in the startup scene? Are you seeing that? Are you working in a startup or in the tech space? And how, what do you think about that? What are you seeing in your field? But that's kind of like what I was really interested to hear you guys' opinion on, was this overall trend of a lot of companies trying to jump on the remote work thing. But the next story that I want to talk about, that is honestly also a really big story. There were a few big stories this week. This one is from Vox. Let me share my screen again. So this one is coming from Recode over at Vox, and this is essentially talking about something that we've been hearing about recently, and that is Apple's internal battle over remote work. So I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I'm always amazed at Apple's headquarters. Like, that's incredible. That's like some sci-fi stuff. But Apple essentially came out and said, "We're not doing this whole remote thing. We want our employees in office." And they've tried to do some sort of hybrid stuff, where they've been saying, I think the most recent plan is to bring people in office 3 times a week. But a lot of people are pushing back on this, and they're talking about the fact that Apple has had a little bit of an unhealthy work ethic going in there. A lot of people talk about how stressful of a work environment it's been, and how much they get pushed, and the fact that they don't really get a lot of rest and recovery time. And a lot of employees are starting to push back on this. And really, what this article talks about is that Apple is a very powerful company, so they can kind of draw that line in the sand, and they do have a lot of leverage to say, no, we are Apple. And if you want to say that you work at Apple and get the benefits of working at Apple, then you need to come into the office. However, some people are just going to say no, and some people don't want to do that. And some people are going to quit over this and are going to then be taken by other companies. So this is a really interesting dynamic here where we're gonna, see people are gonna be quitting Apple if Apple does not budge on this remote or no remote work plan. We will see people leave. People have been leaving already. We've been seeing a lot of people. I know I posted about this recently. It was Peter Levels' company Remote OK. They've been plastering all over San Francisco and LA saying like, hey, you don't have to keep working for these companies. You can go out there and find a remote job, which I've been loving seeing those posts from him. But this is an interesting dynamic here because if you are a tech company right now that is trying to compete with these giants, then this is a really good way for you to compete for top talent. Essentially saying, hey, these companies don't want you working remotely. We're okay with that. So if you're somebody who was happy working remote for these companies and now that they're forcing you back into the office, you don't want to do that, look at us right here. We'll take you. We're super remote friendly. You can travel all over the world. You can get all of these perks of working remotely. So I really think that this is going to shake out over the next year or two, and I'm very interested to see exactly what happens because we can theorize and we can say, hey, here's how we think employees are going to respond, but we just don't know because we don't know how Apple is going to react to this, right? I don't expect Apple to just sit back and say that's fine. We're going to lose some of our top talent that can go out there and get other jobs. So I'm interested to see if Apple does decide to stand their ground and essentially say we're not going to bring remote work, even though so many of you guys want it. What they're going to introduce as a way to combat essentially what they're going to have is going to be this leak in their talent pool. So I'm very curious to see what happens there. Let me know. Or have you been working for a company? Do you have this experience where they've said, "Hey, we're not going to go remote," or "We are going fully remote"? And yeah, I'm curious to hear from you guys in terms of what you've been seeing out there. Next story that I want to talk about today is I found this story at the New York Times, which I thought was so interesting because it's a real human piece story that tells a different side of remote work that maybe we don't hear as often. Let me show you guys. Um, So, like I said, this story is coming from the New York Times. It's titled "Remote Work Gave Us a Life Together. Now What?" And it's a really interesting story. I do recommend you guys head on over and check it out. It's in the newsletter, like I mentioned, and it's not a long piece, but it talks about this couple that have been doing a long-term relationship for several years now. I don't remember exactly which one of them. One of them lived in California. The other, I believe, in New Mexico, and they both had really good jobs and they were very they loved their career and they did not want to leave those positions, so they were forced to live hours and hours apart from each other, and they talked about how difficult that was on their relationship. But even though COVID was a very negative thing, one of the benefits of COVID for them was that both of their jobs went remote, so they were actually able to finally come together in one location without necessarily having to quit their jobs. And they talk about really how beneficial that has been to their relationship. And now, what happens if their companies force them to go back to the office? These are two people who are very, ambitious. They want to do well in their careers. They're very passionate about what they do. And now, because of COVID, they could be forced to, or because of companies wanting employees to come back to the office, they could be separated again. And so, what happens? Put yourself in their shoes. You are very passionate about what you do, you love the other person that you're with, and your company's saying, come back to the office. So you either need to decide, I don't want to work for this company that I really enjoy working with, or, do I potentially risk this relationship taking a negative turn? So I think that this is, in addition with the Apple story that we talked about recently, there's a lot of, it's not as easy as, hey, we believe as a company that you're more productive in the office, or it's not even as easy as people just saying like, oh, I just want to work from home. There's a nuance of the human element here that COVID and remote work has now for better or worse in this scenario, for better, affected these guys' lives. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this shakes out um, over the next couple of years. But what do you have you had a similar experience? I'm curious to hear about how has remote work affected your personal relationships, because essentially this is exactly what it's talking about. It's personal relationships. In this case, it's two people who've been doing a long distance relationship for a really long time. And now they've been able to come together. I've heard from people who have been able to spend more time with their families because maybe they moved back to their hometown, but were able to keep their really good job wherever they were before. So let me know what your experiences have been. I'm curious. The chat is open for you guys that are here live. If you're not live, definitely still leave a comment. I'd be interested to go back and read this and see what people think. But I think this is a really interesting story as well. Definitely give it a read and check out what they say. It's a very interesting piece. But some of the other things that I noticed in the news, we have some new regions popping up that are really trying to attract digital nomads. One of them being in Italy. I can totally see some Italian regions wanting to attract digital nomads, especially if they can provide good Wi-Fi. Latin America, there are several countries in Latin America that are promoting remote work visas and are trying to attract nomads. Mexico being one of them, Costa Rica. I think Argentina partner with Airbnb on some projects. So that region of the world is really trying to attract remote workers and digital nomads. So if that's something you're interested in, you should definitely check out the newsletter with some of that information. And finally, before we wrap things up here, you guys, I do want to tell you about something really exciting that I'm putting on in a couple of weeks. Let me show you here. We're going to be doing, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but we are officially wrapping up the beta launch of my new company, Parable, which is a community of location independent entrepreneurs. And we are publishing real world case studies of online businesses there in that community. The first one is going out this week. People that joined in early have been waiting for this, and I'm super excited to show you what we've been working on behind the scenes. And really, what we're doing is really want to celebrate the launch of Parable officially. So we're bringing speakers, some top speakers that are entrepreneurs and thought leaders in the space to essentially put on a little launch party, have some fun, get to hear from some of these speakers and also get your guys' top questions. That's essentially how we're going to be structuring it. Is every speaker is going to speak for 20 minutes, and then you guys are going to have 10 minutes to ask them your top questions and hear their responses live. So this would be a chance for you to hear from some of these amazing people. But if you're interested, it's totally free. You can just head on over to joinparable.com/launch, and you can register there and join us on October 8th and 9th from 10 a.m. EST. That's going to be 10 a.m. starting both days. It's a Friday and a Saturday. So if you can't join us on Friday because you work, then you can definitely join us on Saturday in the morning. So that's it, you guys. That's all I want to tell you about this week. I'm really excited to have you guys as part of the Nomad Insider crew. Definitely subscribe to the newsletter. You can do that at thatremotelife.com/nomad insider. This is going to be coming out every single Monday, and you can expect these YouTube lives as well. And they're going to get better. I'm just now learning how to actually do lives. How do I share my screen? How do I make this a little bit more interactive for you guys? I'm also thinking about bringing on some other co-hosts for some of these so that we can do some back and forth. So this is really the beginning here, guys, and I really appreciate you being with me this early on, and I hope that you like it. And if you have any suggestions on how I can make this better, how I can make this more fun for you, I'm definitely all ears and would love to hear from you guys. But I hope you have an amazing week. If you don't follow me on Instagram already, head on over to Instagram and follow me at Mitkoka. I'm pretty active over there, posting and sharing some things that maybe don't make it onto the newsletters, and I'd love to hear from you there about what you think about these lives. So thank you guys so much, and have an awesome rest of your week.